Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Crash and today we're talking about the Big Three. For those that don't know who the Big Three are, well, even if some may disagree, they are One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. But the question I want to start with is not who the Big Three are, but what the Big Three is. Which honestly is hard to define, because the Big Three isn't really a formal term. It's not coined from any article or documentary, it's not a term used by Jump, Shueisha, or the others. It's not even a term that originated in Japan. The Big Three is a term born from the mid-2000s Western internet forums. And I mean, it made sense to call them the Big Three, even before we knew they were going to be as big in size as they end up being. If you got into anime in the 2000s, you probably did it because of Naruto, or maybe Bleach, or One Piece. I mean, that was my experience, and I know I'm not alone. Sure, Death Note and Fullmetal Alchemist also introduced people to anime. They were juggernauts of the era as well, but the Big Three were arguably bigger in fame and similar in appeal. Yes, they were all shonens, but Death Note was clearly made from another cloth. Fullmetal Alchemist was a full-on battle shonen, and to be fair, we didn't know how big it would be at the time, but even then, it wasn't only just different enough from the other Big Three, it was a monthly manga from a different magazine. Whereas the Big Three were all weekly Shonen Jump manga, and they weren't just any three, they were the three that dominated the rankings and sales of it. They all started at around the same time. All of them were inspired by the previous generation of battle manga classics like Senseiya, Stardust Crusaders, and mainly Dragon Ball. Well, Bleach was more inspired by Senseiya, and they would influence the manga that are in the magazine right now. All of the Big Three are part of the top 20 best-selling manga of all time, and they all deserve it. But how did we get here? Well, let's dive into the history of the mangaka behind them before the Big Three. Our story starts in 1992, and as I was getting ready to be born, Eiichiro Oda was 17 and already making waves in the manga world. His one-shot, Wanted, got second place in Jump's Tezuka Award, an award that they give to rookie mangaka. Contrary to the other mangaka we'll be talking about today, Oda started working in Shonen Jump as an assistant. In 1993, he worked under the mangaka that had won the same award a year before him, Kaitani Shinobu. He was better known as the man behind One Outs and Liar Game. In 1993, he was working on his debut manga, Suizan Police Gang, which sadly only lasted 2 volumes before being cancelled. From there, Oda would move to the mentor he credits the most on his road, Masaya Tokuhiro. Tokuhiro was a veteran, working in Jump since 1983. By that point he was writing new Jungle King Tar-chan, from whom Oda worked on till the end of its run in 1995. But as soon as Tokuhiro released a new manga, Mizuno Tomodachi Kappa-man, the year after, Oda returned to work with him, but that manga would only last 3 volumes. Tokuhiro, however, secured a place for Oda as an assistant in one of the biggest Jump titles at the time, Rurouni Kenshin, written by Nobuhiro Watsuki. He would work with Atsuki until he got his series. You see, Oda never really stopped working on his one-shots. He wrote God's Gift for the Future and Itsuki Yakyo in 1993, the later of which would give him yet another award in the form of the 104th Upstep Award, this time in first place. In 1994 he would write Monsters, a one-shot that actually includes a character that would later appear in One Piece. In an interview with Tokuhiro and Oda, it was mentioned that Oda was already planning on writing a manga about pirates, inspired by Viking the Viking, a show he loved as a kid. Tokuhiro also mentioned that it was kinda painful that people interviewing him would only focus on Oda, which is very sad. But back to Oda. In 1996 we would see the first attempt at this pirate manga, a one-shot called Romance Dawn. This one-shot reads like basically an extra chapter of early One Piece. If you'd put it between chapter 1 and 2, it would make sense. There is a flashback that shows a lot of scenes that would be iconic parts of chapter 1. They are virtually the same with few exceptions. The one-shot was popular enough that he wrote it again, this time in proper weekly Shonen Jump. It would be fairly different from the original, but it bore the same name and focused on the same character. It again reads like an early One Piece chapter. It also introduced a character that has a different name and backstory, but very much is a prototype of Nami. But perhaps the biggest difference is changing Shanks for a grandpa figure that would, later on, also be featured in proper One Piece, this time not a pirate, but Marine. Both one-shots also dropped the Marine versus Pirate feuds to introduce two types of pirates, Morganeers and Peace Mains, who essentially are bad and good pirates, respectively. Since both one-shots take time to explain these two types, I'm assuming that originally One Piece was going to be about these two types of pirates. All of other one-shots would be collected in 1998 in the Wanted compilation named after the work that started it all. All one-shots, but one. The original Romance Dawn. The reason for that is because in 1997, Oda would write another version very similar to the first, this time however as a serialization and under a different name, One Piece. But rewinding 2 years back to 1995, it's time for Masashi Kishimoto, the other of two mangaka twins, to debut in Shonen Jump. His debut work is called Karakuri, and it's a bit darker than any of his actual serializations, but it has a main character that borrows a design very similar to one of the characters that would define Naruto. As for the darkness, well, it does make sense. Kishimoto was inspired by Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump, but he was also inspired by titles like Akira and Ghost in the Shell, which inspirations can be seen in the sci-fi elements of his first one-shot. This gave him the Upstep Award that Oda had also won a couple of years prior. But after this, most of Kishimoto's works got rejected by his editor. It was only in 1997 that he got another one published, a one-shot about a ninja called Naruto. The Naruto one-shot features our main character in most of his glory, with the main change being that he's not possessed by the Nine-Tails. He is the Nine-Tails. And he also has the power to shapeshift, which he also uses to bring out the classic sexy jutsu at some point. But everything else is different. The setting is in modern Japan, there's almost no other ninjas to be seen, and the entire thing is a mystery crime story. It's bizarre, but decent, and it definitely has what makes the Naruto character Naruto. You would assume that from there on out, the path to the serialization would be smoother, but it really wasn't. The first serialization that Kishimoto tried was actually a reworked version of Karakuri, but that failed. Incredibly so. It got cancelled in the very first chapter, simply because it both tanked in the surveys and Kishimoto had serious problems with the deadline. After this failure, Kishimoto embraced the seinen influences even more and decided to quit on shonen manga. Back in his high school days, he used to write with a more of a seinen style, so it made sense for him to fully try this approach. He published two one-shots during this time, Mario, a mafia manga, and Yakyo, a baseball one. Neither had much success, but they would eventually be reworked. In 2010 he published another baseball manga by the name of Bench, and Mario would eventually be published in the pages of Jump SQ 15 years after its creation in 2013. Following these two, however, he was convinced to try shonen for one last time. He started by writing a one-shot called Magic Mushroom, but the editor told him to shoot for a serialization instead. So he revised his previous one-shot and changed the settings and plot, but kept the same name, and in 1999 Naruto finally got published. 1999 also saw the serialization debut of the final mangaka we'll be talking about today, Tire Kubo. Kubo got started in Jump in 1996 when he submitted the one-shot Ultra Unholy Arted Machine. It was a bit rough on the edges, as Kubo admittedly didn't know about draft pages or any of the sort, and it failed to win any award contrary to our previous mangaka. But that didn't stop Shueisha, as an editor of Jump contacted Kubo showing interest in him. Kubo would publish two more one-shots in the following years, Rune Master Urara in the same year and Bad Shield United in 1997. After this, he would work on his first serialization, Zombie Powder. Zombie Powder is a battle shonen about Gamma Kutabi, a man looking for the mythical rings containing the zombie powder, which can revive the dead and grant immortality to the living. It's honestly a fun read, and a decent battle shonen, especially the train arc, which is also the final one. It shows a lot of designs and combats that wouldn't feel alien in Bleach, but it failed to grab the attention of the Japanese audience, so it got cancelled with only 27 chapters and 4 volumes. Kubo would blame this on both his personal emotional problems at the time and following too much the ideas of his editors to the point where the manga stopped feeling his own. He would only be happy with the final moments of it. Zombie Powder would eventually be translated by Viz and brought to the West, where it got more praise and success. But that was in the middle of the Bleach craze, so it makes sense that it wouldn't tank as hard. The character design of Gamma was not wasted, however, and it reappeared in Bleach with a new paint coat and looking way cooler. After Zombie Powder, Kubo started working on ideas for his next work. Originally he was going to write a story called Snipe. It was the basis for Bleach, but Ichigo wore a suit and a gun. But eventually he drew a high school girl with a sword and he thought it looked pretty cool, but he wanted her in a kimono. That drawing of Rukia was a turning point, and from there on out, the world of Bleach was created. With the drop of the gun element, the title of Snipe was dropped as well, in favor of the one we know today. This one-shot is very similar to the serialization, with a few exceptions. Rukia becomes toy-sized after using her powers, and that's why Ichigo needs to work in her place. And the character of Orihime is dead, and the passing of her spirit is the main plot of this one-shot. Other than that, most of the elements of this prototype would transfer to the serialization version, who got greenlit after the one-shot had proven to be popular enough. So, in 2001, we finally got to see the debut of Bleach in Shonen Jump's pages. It wouldn't take long for them to get anime adaptations. One Piece got it 2 years after the manga released, in 1999, Naruto would have to wait a bit longer, 3 years, but in 2002 it got its deserving adaptation, Bleach would also have to wait a similar time, with the anime coming out in 2004. The manga of the Big Three was actually the first thing to come to the West, all of them as part of Viz Media's Shonen Jump version of the magazine. That magazine was published in 2002, and it had One Piece as one of the debut series, together with Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yu Yu Hakusho. The magazine would then grace Naruto in 2003 and Bleach in 2004. It wouldn't take long before each of them had their tankobon releases. One Piece's Volume 1 got released in June of 2003, and Naruto's only a couple months later, in August of the same year. Bleach fans would have to wait till June of 2004 to get their hands on the first volume of the series. But arguably, what brought the most attention to the Big Three was not the manga, but the anime adaptations who would come to the US in the following years. One Piece would again be the first. In 2004, it got licensed by 4Kids Entertainment. The same company was in charge of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. 4Kids got the license as part of the package deal, and it didn't really think too much about it at the time. But as they checked the anime out, they found out that One Piece wasn't really as kid-friendly as they wanted it to be. So they forced it to be with edits that you can find anywhere. It was honestly a very bad localization with a lot of forced edits and 40 episodes worth of content removed. It was so bad that people still blame it for the lack of popularity One Piece had compared to the other two in the West. But the 4Kids also blamed the One Piece localization for ruining their reputation, and they dropped the license for it as soon as they could, which was in 2006. Thankfully for the other two, it was Viz Media who grabbed the rights for them. Naruto was released in 2005 in Toonami in the United States and Jetix in the UK. I am from neither of those countries though, so I didn't live through that, but I can assure you that when it hit Portugal, just about a year or two later, it slowly became a big deal. Not bigger than Dragon Ball, but only second to it, I'd say. Bleach was released in 2006 in the US, in the Adult Swim time slot of Cartoon Network, which didn't air in Portugal either. It remained in that spot for most of its run, but it did have some hiatuses where it was replaced by Death Note and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Give time for the dub to happen more smoothly. In 2007, it was One Piece's time to shine again when it got licensed by Funimation, who redubbed the entire show. This was the start of the anime explosion in the West. This shows, Toonami, and the fact that the internet was now more accessible than ever also meant that the people could just check out the original version with fansubs. Now, fansubs existed since the late 70s, but with the advent of IRC channels and BitTorrent, everyone could upload it and watch it. Same could be said about scanlations, and scanlations of the Big Three were in no shortage. Naruto basically exploded during this time. Everyone and their mother was watching it, and if you liked anime, you knew Naruto. Maybe you hated it, but you knew it. In Japan, the manga and anime of the Big Three was also met with incredible success, especially One Piece, who slowly but steadily became the best-selling manga of its time. In 2008, Oricon started sharing the yearly sales of manga, or at the very least that's the earliest I can find. So I thought it would be nice to check out the sales of the Big Three as they went on. So, the 2008 sales of One Piece at number 1, which was the tradition of Oricon until very recently, but we will talk about that eventually. Naruto is number 2 with 4.2 million sales, and Bleach is actually behind 20th Century Boys and Reborn in 5th place with 3.1 million. This may sound weird, but by 2009, Bleach was already number 3 with 6.4 million. The other two also saw a big growth, with Naruto reaching 6.8 million and One Piece taking its first steps to become the best-selling manga with 14.7 million. The growth continues in 2010, with One Piece reaching insane numbers, 32.3 million sales. Naruto's grows to 7.4 and Bleach drops again to number 5 with 5.1 million, behind Kimi no Todoki and fairy tale. One Piece's sudden growth is attributed to the promotion of Strong World's movie, which led to people buying all the 56 volumes that were available at that time. It was a huge boost in sales, and the impact of it is still visible today. But it was even more visible in 2011, with the record being broken again, as One Piece sells a fantastic 37.9 million copies. A number so insane that will remain the yearly sales records in manga for the next 9 years. Naruto keeps the second spot as tradition, but Bleach drops again to 8th place with 4.1 million sales. 2012 sees One Piece drop its sales numbers a bit to 23.4 million, and it sees Naruto being dethroned from its second place by Kuroko no Basket with 6.4 million, which looks worse. 12th spot, it sells only 2.9 million. You should note that at this point Bleach is a couple of years away from its most successful arc, Soul Society. In fact, this puts it right at the start of its final one. Not only that, but this year also marks the cancellation of its anime adaptation, which was definitely a big blow. 2013 brings no surprises. One Piece gets a lower but still pretty high 18.1 million, Naruto falls to 5th with 5.5, and Bleach is found 10 spots lower in 15th with 2.7 million, which in terms of raw numbers isn't that big of a fall. 2014 sees One Piece fight for its spot with Attack on Titan, and winning only by 100,000 sales more, with 11.8 million. Naruto ends its run in the magazine and drops to 6th place, but keeps the sales number, with 5.5 million. With its final farewell, it drops a nod to One Piece, who nods back. Bleach is left alone in this exchange in 18th place, but it did see growth, with 2.9 million sales. 2015 sees Naruto in 14th place despite its ending, with 3.4 million, which is actually pretty nice. One Piece grows a bit more, back to its 14 million, and Bleach drops out of the top 20, but it does maintain its sales, with 2.8. Its final year in the magazine sees a rise in place, but a drop in total sales, with 2.2 million, granting it its 17th place. I could only find the top 10 of 2017, and Bleach is obviously not part of it. And while One Piece is still number 1 with 12 million sales, at this point we're already past the age of the big three. The 2010s started to show a shift in anime and what was popular. With the anime of Bleach ending and the start of Attack on Titan and Sword Art Online, the big three stopped being the intro anime for most of the community. By 2016, Naruto and Bleach had both reached their end with remarkable runs, both of them passing the 700 chapter mark, which is something not many manga can claim. Manga inspired by them started to appear and make waves. My Hero Academia, Black Clover, and Jujutsu Kaisen are just some of them. The market also saw a shift in model. We don't strive for extra long manga with ongoing anime that struggle to catch up. Instead, manga that pass 300 chapters are now a rare thing, with them going out while at their peak. Jujutsu Kaisen's recent announcement that the manga would only last 2 more years seemed to only reinforce this model. The anime, now more than ever, seems to focus on seasons, and if Black Clover was an outlier, it seems like it will now conform to the norms, with only One Piece still remaining of this golden era. But even One Piece is starting to see its title in danger. 2019 saw One Piece fall from the first place in Oricon for the first time in years, with the increased popularity of Kimetsu no Yaiba, but in 2020 One Piece fell to 3rd place, with Kingdom surpassing its numbers as well. Sure, part of it is because it also released less volumes than normal, but it's still incredible that 2 series managed to dethrone One Piece in a year, with honestly Jujutsu Kaisen looking to do the same in 2021. But perhaps the biggest sign that the era has passed came in the form of Samurai 8. Samurai 8 was a manga with tons and tons of promotion due to the fact that it was written by Masashi Kishimoto and drawn by Akira Okubo, a previous assistant of Naruto. But that promotion didn't save it, and the manga did abysmally bad in sales for the name that it carries. Volumes 1 and 2 got released in the same week, and together they managed to sell 24,164 copies. That may not sound too bad, but Jujutsu Kaisen's Volume 7 in the same week sold 88,157, this being 2 years before the anime would boost its sales. Chainsaw Man's Volume 4, very early in its run, also managed to oversell it. Samurai 8 would end up being cancelled a year after its debut, but that doesn't mean the big three are necessarily over. One Piece is, of course, still ongoing. Despite already being planting the seeds for its finale, we still have a couple of years to enjoy it. In 2015, a movie sequel to Naruto manga was released. It was called Boruto, Naruto the Movie, and it introduced a brand new generation of characters. This movie was written by Kishimoto himself, with the help of Ukyo Kodashi, and he handled the character designs himself as well. Boruto was the 11th highest grossing film of the year, and that seemed to have been good enough for Shueisha to ask Kishimoto to write a manga sequel based on Boruto. Kishimoto refused to work on it, but suggested Yukio Kodashi as a writer, because he was happy with his work on the movie, and for the art he suggested the chief assistant of Naruto, Mikio Ikemoto. With this new team, Boruto Naruto Next Generations officially started in May of 2016 as a monthly series in Weekly Shonen Jump, eventually moving to V-Jump, the same magazine who publishes Dragon Ball Super, in 2019. Boruto isn't as big as Naruto, but that doesn't mean it's not selling well. The first volume sold over 350,000 copies in its first month according to the Oricon. That's at least way more than Samurai 8 ever did. And talking about Samurai 8, after its cancellation, Kodashi stepped down as the writer of Boruto, and it's Kishimoto who's been taking care of that since November of last year. But arguably Bleach is the oddest member of the big three right now. It started when the editor-in-chief of Jump contacted Kubo to write something for the 50th anniversary of the magazine. He wanted something new, but he also wanted more of Bleach. Kubo, wanting to explore the West Wing part of Soul Society, decided to create a one-shot called Burn the Witch. The one-shot was pretty successful, but Kubo then remained silent for about 2 years. But in March of 2020, Bleach fans had something to celebrate. The Bleach 20th anniversary project included the return of Burn the Witch to the Jump magazine as a short series, and a movie of the same name, both to be launched later that year. The manga was released starting in August and has a total of 4 chapters, only to reveal that it's not over yet and a new season will come in the future. The movie was released not much after, in October, with a decent reception. But the biggest piece of news of Bleach project is the return of Bleach's anime, promising to adapt the 1000-year blood arc that had been left out of the original anime. This news was huge among fans, and it also brought a lot of new fans of anime and manga to check out Bleach for the first time. With the anime promising to be released this year, it seems that now, more than ever, people are appreciating what was probably always the most underappreciated manga of the big three. Now, I've tried to make the video up to now to be focused on facts and numbers, but I do want to reserve this final section to talk a little bit about my experience and opinion of the big three. So if you just wanted to know the history of the titles, you're free to go now. But the big three were just such a big part of me. They were the ones that made me watch anime and read manga. Like, when I was in high school, everyone in my class, or at least every boy in my class, was getting into Naruto, and it just looked cool. I did start with One Piece, but Naruto was the one I kinda prioritized once I started, because every friend of mine was into it, and it was pretty fun to read and follow. I still remember watching the fight between Gaara and Lee and just being sold on anime. One Piece took me a bit longer to get. It was with Chopper's backstory, when with the first fight between Luffy and Crocodile, that I decided that One Piece was great. Bleach, I got addicted right away. It was the last that I started, but I just consumed everything there was to consume. It became my favorite anime and manga. The first couple of arcs are so good, and I spent most of my time with the series reading the manga weekly. Naruto I caught up during the fight between Itachi and Sasuke, Bleach I caught up around the later half of Wakamundo, and One Piece I caught up in Marineford. Most of my friends got spoiled by that death in One Piece, but I never was, because I got to live it as it happens. That 1 month of waiting for the time to skip to Sword and the designs to be revealed, it was just so exciting. If you were there, you know, and if you weren't, man, I wish you had. And following Bleach weekly was a pain. I'm sorry, but it so was. The final battle of Wakamundo lasted for more than a year. It was just so annoying and frustrating. Each chapter was just so little and lacked any substance that it made me hate Bleach for a good while, which was very sad for me, because I used to love it. And honestly, I never got the hype for Bleach back. The other arcs had nice moments, especially when Kenpachi was on screen, but they weren't nowhere near as cool as the start of it. Naruto was fun to follow, and that last chapter was pretty great, not gonna lie. It was a great ending, but I have to admit that when Boruto appeared, my first thoughts were, no, I'm good with Naruto for a while. But it was weird. If I was to make a top 50 manga, and just to be clear, if I was to make that, would just be filled with manga that I love from top to bottom, but I don't think Naruto nor Bleach would make the cut. One Piece would definitely be top 5 if not top 3, but the impact that One Piece had on me is just so great. When you follow something for months, after years, after decades, it will have an impact on you. And it's just a great story to follow. I'm more invested in the adventures of Luffy than I ever was for anything else. And there was this conversation that I had with my girlfriend, because I don't cry while watching media, and she asked if I ever had cried. And I said, not really, but when One Piece ends, I think I will. At that point it's going to be more than half of my life following this manga. And even now, life before One Piece and Naruto feels so distant. Like it wasn't me, you know? That kid had different interests, different friends, lived in a different world. I want to know the ending. I want Oda to finish the manga in the time frame that he wants, and I don't want him to drag things out, but I'm a bit afraid of my world without One Piece. But I am getting the box sets, so I guess I can relive it whenever I want to. I haven't felt that attachment with Naruto nor Bleach for a while now. I like them, they were big parts of my teen years, and I love them at some point. But over the years, I just found out more manga that I liked more, that impacted me more. But doing this video just felt so nostalgic. I remember why I did love those series at some point. They were great, they were fun, and they were the product of the times where my life was changing. Of when I met my current friends, of when I discovered the wonders of anime and manga, of when I discovered how weird and horrible and fun and magic the internet was, and of when I found out what love was and how rejection hurt. Of when I went to my first anime convention and found out just how big this world really was. This is not the era of the big three anymore. But I'm glad I lived through it. And I only hope that new fans still find the same magic in the anime and manga of today. And if you watched it till here, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.